Hey guys, so this is my after action report, as I call them, or post-build pre-finishing video on the Tauchpanzer III-H that I reviewed for Armorama.com. This is not my usual type of video because frankly I didn't like this kit at all, and all I want to do is explain that because I reviewed it officially, and I want to do these sorts of videos for everything that I do an inbox of so that people know. But this thing was a train wreck, at least in my eyes. I'm sure there are plenty of guys that can make it good, or well, rather, but I didn't care for it, and I'll tell you why. You can read the review at Armorama.com. This was the first kit that was sent to me by Jim Starkweather, who runs all the kit maker sites. And hopefully I'll do more. I got one more Dragon kit lined up, and hopefully I'm not like banished from it, because I gave it a 60 out of 100. I think I should have given it a 59 if we're going on the grading scale the college I teach at uses. It failed in my opinion. So I'll do my best to get through all the stuff that I did in my text review, which is pretty thorough. So the first thing that I did not like, right off the bat, if we talk about suspension, because that's where you start, they had PE called out, as they always do on Panzer III idlers, but it wasn't in the box, as I actually said that in the inbox. There was a PE sheet for like a Panzer IIIe in there with like the early drive sprocket PE, but nothing for this. So I just left them off and kept going. The PE anyway. It goes inside of here, like on each side to the inside of both pieces. I don't know how drastic that will affect, the final result, but it was a bad way to start. It was sort of, gives you a bad feeling. You're like, what? Why? Okay, so the wheels were fine, the rollers were fine, the sprocket was fine. Everything like around that type of stuff was just as good as you'd normally expect it to be. I think the only other thing in the earlier steps I had to do was, I think this one, this hatch right here, I had to drill a hole and install myself. Which, that kind of thing I'm fine with. But it was a signal of the type of build that it was, which was a lot of drill this hole and fill it, and now the part is correct. The rear plate, the upper rear plate back here was made out of really thin plastic and was a bit difficult to understand how they even wanted me to put it together. I actually had to do it out of sequence for what they wanted. And it was just fiddly. These pieces were a thinner plastic than a lot of it. Like this plate here would have been a pretty thick standard plastic. The white box specific Tauchpanzer parts were kind of squishy and harder to work with. More importantly is this large part here. You had to sand off, if I'm not mistaken, 13 different bits. If you look really carefully here, you can see some sanding stuff, the remnants of what was. Just tiny little rivets and things, and there was stuff on this plate and on the plate behind it, and I had to glue those two plates together, so everything had to be prepped, and this is the kind of thing that is indicative of this build. It was like, here's some parts. Cut all these other bits off, sand them. Look, now it's a Tauchpanzer III-H part. I'm like, really? Because it seems like you're just telling me to hack and slash to make what I wanted. So that was not ideal at all. The fenders, relatively straightforward. In an odd move, I decided to go with the styrene only option, because there's always like this styrene and PE one. I just went with the styrene ones. I didn't care. The tools were fine on most of it, and then, yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. That PE part right there with the fire extinguisher, I never really felt like I understood how it was supposed to sit. It's on there, but it doesn't really fit terribly well. And then the headlights I had some issue with because, let's see which one has it and which one doesn't. Alright, so let me see how close I can get in. If it goes blurry, I apologize. I can only get in a certain amount before the camera freaks out, but I think you can see it. On the back of that headlight, there's this little thing that comes off the back. And that you're supposed to cut off and glue on separately. Now that headlight you're looking at is actually a spare from a Nashorn kit I have, which just worked. And the conduit reached correctly. If you look from here to there, it actually fits pretty well. On the other side, you see how there's a gap in the conduit? Now that could be my mistake. But this is the actual light from the kit they wanted without that piece on it, which I didn't glue because I tried and failed and was like, frankly, I don't care. I did not mean to be unprofessional in my review, but I was like, you know, I'm doing this on a timetable trying to get it out, and I think I got enough experience in the pieces to tell people what I thought without suffering through a whole lot more of what they wanted me to do. So in the end, it's very strange. Spare piece, had the piece molded on, looks beautiful, fit perfectly. The kit piece, not as much. Yeah. The engine deck was of particular annoyance to me. Let's see if you can see. The way that the tow cable is mounted was lower than usual, plus there were no holes for it to be mounted, so I had to cut off the locating tabs on the thing itself and just glue it in place. Now if you look between it, let me try to get you a little closer, you can see a bit of filler right there in between it, right there. That's because there's a tie down that should be there that won't fit if you put the cable where they tell you to put it. If you put it higher up it would fit, but it just wouldn't fit, so that was pretty annoying. Also, if you look at this top piece, there is lots of filling that goes on. Like, so the piece that this glues onto had to have stuff cut off of it, I believe. This had to have stuff cut off and filled. And that, again, was just, that was the story with this kit. It was tons of cutting stuff off, filling it, sanding it, and then now you've got the right part. This front piece, there was some photo etch option for these hatches. Since I left it closed, I didn't use it. Here, this thing actually went together pretty well. The photo etch thing around the bow MG, I thought that was a pretty neat piece. That looks really nice. These guys were a bit hard to mount because it's a multi-piece PE assembly. There's a little fins underneath there, so there's a little bit of, it's not perfectly straight, but it's okay. And then this dude here, these are neat, specific to the Tauchpanzer, which is just these like closable doors for deep weighting instead of the PE grills. I thought that was okay. But again, a little thin. This plastic was not up to what I'm used to with Dragon. The turret, I don't have a lot to complain about. It's actually nearly identical to this turret that I've built, which is to the Panzer III initial. I mean, they're exactly the same. So apart from this like Tauchpanzer rubber seal around it, so this was all pretty good. I put the basket on, which was an option. You know, everything else in here was pretty much fine. I have this actually not glued, so I can take this piece off for painting. Yeah, I actually really like these turrets, and the entire turret is included for the earlier Panzer IIIs, which I thought was really strange. You know, I mentioned that in the inbox if you saw it. Like, so here's the other part. This has the cupola part that comes out. The entire 37mm gun assembly was in there. There's super early, two different super early cupolas, so that part you could actually make, you know, quite a bit of different versions of a Panzer III with the sprues in the box, but this was at least an area that the kit was not deficient in, so that was good. The only other stuff, really, the outside turret bits were fine, was this area here was actually quite confusing for me. There's some PE to bend, and to get it to sit correctly is actually a lot easier than I made it, because there are pieces that support that folded PE, but I actually glued it on before, and I think they're the pieces that are like inside on the back there. So just make sure that you pay attention to the order that that happens in. And that's really the majority of the build stuff. There's not a whole lot. It's not complicated, but it was hack and slashy and some crap plastic around it. Now here's the major problem, and the reason why I sank the kit score versus, like, you know, if I was scoring the parts or previous Panzer III kits, it'd be one thing. Here's your tracks. Okay, I'm going to get in pretty close on this. Alright, so this is a later Panzer III sprocket, and this is the track that you're supposed to put on it while I go this way. So if you see, for me to try to get it, like the teeth through one, there's no way to get them to get through the other teeth unless I like stretch it like that much, and it still won't go. So to those who are familiar with the Panzer III-4 tracks, what you're looking at is 36 centimeter tracks that came in a box with a kit that needed 40 centimeter. So these are not even an option. They don't fit. So, you know, along with all of the problems of kind of, you know, the hack and slash nature of the thing mixed with tracks that didn't fit. So, you know, I feel like I have to justify being so hard on it, but let me, you know, again, this is a Dragon Panzer III, turn it backwards, from 2009 with magic tracks that are perfect, with all the correct parts in the box, and the instructions are pretty good for Dragon. I know Dragon instructions are supposed to be kind of crap. It's like part of the appeal or whatever. No, it's not. We've just learned to deal with them. So, tracks in a box that don't fit are like, you can't do that. And why are you charging whatever you're charging? Let's say, whatever this thing runs. I know that 80 is not what this type of kit would go for. Between 55 and like 70, I would say, is what you're going to see at retail. Yeah, you're going to pay less for it if you're smart, but... And then you can pick this up for 29 to 35 on eBay. And that's kind of what I went at with people was, I have no idea why we would continue to buy new Dragon stuff. This thing, like, DS is terrible. Like, I didn't even mention, but when I tried to glue these together, they just shredded. I'm not even sure how I have them together anymore. I kept trying to do different ways to glue them because I wanted to have it in the review pictures. I wanted to have these wrapped around, you know, the suspension, because why wouldn't you? But I couldn't, and the first time I tried to glue them together, they just, like, you know, ripped apart into bits. So if you look really closely, I did like a lot of repair gluing, and then they still don't, they didn't seam together. Like if you look, let me get in there. Like there's not a smooth, like you can make it work, you'll have to glue it and melt it a bit, but like they in general want to do this. They're just not well made. Dragon's DS Tiger tracks actually do. They're stiff enough that they sort of snap together and they seam correctly and they're believable, and these just aren't. And they're the wrong size. So I guess what I was trying to do was be absolutely honest with my opinion. It was a miserable build because there were tons of times when I knew there was better ways they could have done it. There were parts that I just had to do tons of work on just to make them correct. You know, it wasn't just building the thing, it was fixing it. They're like, it's like a software program that gets, or a game that gets launched without needing to be patched, you know, like a broken game. And they gave us, you know, 70% of a model. And I think that as a sort of model building community, we need to stand up for ourselves and be like, hey, this is terrible. Like, is it an old, like, 70s Tamiya kit? No, there's some really beautifully tooled, amazing parts in there. They weren't made for this kit, though. It's like they had those sitting around and threw them in the box. It's like resting on laurels from 5 to 10 years ago. Yeah, there's some really good stuff in that box. It's also in this box, except none of the dumb stuff is in that this box. So, you know, final conclusion on it, I don't even want to paint the thing. It was a very, very... I felt taken advantage of. And I didn't even pay for this one. Imagine if I had, I'd be very angry. But this was a review kit that I was building, and I was like, damn, this is awful. So I would just avoid the thing at all costs. I think it is a money grab, and I think every part in this kit existed on some other sprue. I know for a fact it did, because all of the Tauchpanzer sprues came from the white box ones for the actual deep diving with all of the crazy pipes and stuff. It's a little crooked. I would just not get this kit. I would find another way to do a Tauchpanzer III.